do some other stories now. As climate change continues to bedevil Ghana and the rest of the world, global leaders have mooted the idea of the general population to initiate activities that will address the problem. Here at Joy News, we've been doing our part with our field exhibition project. We have a report on that for you shortly. But let me welcome you to the studio, Jacob Johnson Atakpa. He is Zero Waste Cities Projects Manager, Green Africa Youth Organization, and he'll be sharing with us how they are tackling climate change through their campaigns as well. Right now, though, let me bring you our field exhibition. Hannah Odami takes you to Medina here in Accra.
3, 4, and 5. That's the number of heaps of rubbish on display in between the highways on the Medina-Zongo stretch at the La Nkwantanan district in the national capital. Pedestrians call this an eyesore, especially for a city which yearns to be the cleanest in Africa.
It's very abhorrent. They have to charge those who are around too. You are sitting here saying, and after that you go and put garbage here. It's not nice. Those should change their attitude.
Those who make, gather and dump the rubbish in between the roads say it is the assembly which has not been responsible in collecting the rubbish.
The waste collectors don't come to pick the rubbish, and so this place is always filthy and smelling. The entire stretch is filled with rubbish. Why? This leads to cholera and malaria. Government should pay the collectors so they can do their work. I dare ask, is this the country we say will be the cleanest in Africa soon?
Ghana say,
Also contesting are some of the traders who sell along the highway and are being blamed for generating such filth and not dumping them in designated bins.
When we close from work, we collect all the rubbish we make. We always sweep our working areas, especially when we close. And the waste collectors come for the rubbish every morning, but today they are late.
Fed up with the constant spectacle of rubbish littered all over the stretch, this regular user of the road proposes a solution.
You see, the rubbish is not from the Togo people, it's not from Burkina Faso, it's not from Côte d'Ivoire, it's from the Ghanaians. The ordinary man who is walking on the street, you see, you come and pick it today, tomorrow when you come and meet it again. So now what are you going to do? So this one, me, I don't put blame on the Zoom Lion, because the Zoom Lion, now no place they're supposed to put the dustbins. So they will tell the people, you put it on the middle of the road, so after another day they will come and pick it. So we will talk. Government will go, government will come, government will go, government will come. We are in the same problem.
Frustrated about the regular sight of rubbish, this road user also struggles to recommend to Joy News a lasting solution he believes would help keep the city clean.
I don't know. We are the cause, you see, so at least the assembly should at least give us a lot of these bins, rubbish bins, so that if anything, we can dump inside, instead of putting it on the ground.
From Medina here in Accra, I am Hannah Odami for Joy News.
Well, thankfully, I have Jacob Johnson here with me in the studio. He is the Zero Waste Cities Project Manager, Green Africa Youth Organization. Thanks for your time here on The Pulse. Now, let's get straight into it. How does waste collection and management actually influence our climate?
All right, thank you very much, and a very good afternoon to your audience. I think the first thing that we should also recognize is that waste as a problem is very pervasive in Accra. It's not just Accra, the entirety of Ghana, waste is a very big problem. And when you look at the signs of it, when you mismanage your waste, especially organics, or you mix up all your waste and you take it to a landfill, which is the status quo, what happens is that because of putrefaction, methane gas is produced. And methane is one of the greenhouse gases, or the short-lived climate pollutant that we have. They have the ability of trapping heat and then increasing the atmosphere's temperature. And that is what you, over a short period of time, over 30 years, 3 decades, you then call climate change. And so it's not a one-time thing, it's a compound effect that sort of cascades and then becomes climate change. And then we start to feel the effects of very high temperatures in Accra.
Which we are already.
Exactly, and you know, for the past months, a lot of people have been complaining about that. Then you have very, very heavy downpours. You have flooding in Accra, which is also a problem of another aspect of improper management of waste, which is the illegal dumping of waste and other drainages and other places. And so it's a very complex problem. But the thing is that once you mismanage your waste, it creates a problem that doesn't end. Because then, even if it doesn't produce methane at a landfill somewhere, it finds itself into a drainage, which can then choke your gutter, which can lead to flooding in cities like Accra. And so it's a very complex problem. But the thing is that there's a solution to it. And at Green Africa Youth Organization, what the project that I'm on, which is a zero waste project, tackles waste from a holistic perspective. The thing is that when you're able to divert waste from landfills, you do a lot to it. Because zero waste essentially is a concept that says that do not produce waste that cannot be used for something else. So if you are doing an activity, you're pursuing an agenda, and you're going to create waste, and the end product of that waste has to be found at a landfill, has to be found in a drainage, has to be burnt, then do not produce that waste. That is a very simple concept. And so when you create organic waste, which a lot of people create, from households to organizations to eateries, restaurants, and a lot of hospitality establishments, there's a lot of organic waste that is created. The solution is then to compost your organic waste, to turn it into compost, and then that can then be used to green your city, green your house, green your organization's workspace, have flowers, or even plant a garden in your home. And so that is how you properly manage organic waste. But in Accra, because of high cost of waste collection from formalized waste collection agencies, or even sometimes the informal sector, and because of the convenience of just dumping your refuse in a drainage, or just putting it outside so that when it rains, the rains will just throw them away or move them away for you. And just the convenience of just not caring about what happens to your waste. All these problems have compounded into what we see today. And so you have the open burning of waste, which also releases certain toxic fumes. And people always complain that when you burn waste or when you burn anything, the fumes are toxic, they harm them. You may not see the effect now, but 10, 20 years from now, you go for a checkup and they tell you, oh, you have a respiratory problem. And you will not even think that it's because you were burning waste some 5 years back for a period of 5 years. That's why you have that. And so the zero waste model is one that's been working. And the genesis of it is that Gaio as an organization started the Sustainable Communities Project in Edubiase, that's Adanse South. Okay. And based off of the feasibility studies that we did, we're able to set up a material recovery facility. The purpose of that facility is that it receives waste from the community, it receives waste from the market, and tries to recycle that waste. So you collect your organic waste and turn it into compost, you collect your plastic waste, wash, sort, pelletize, and then you can recycle into other plastic products, or even pet-to-pet recycling, essentially. And then you collect your e-waste, which you prevent people from burning, like was done at Agbebloshi, which was touted as one of the most toxic sites in the world a couple years back. But thankfully, that is not a story. That is not a story today. And so you prevent burning of waste, bring them to a material recovery facility, process them, and ensure that it becomes another product. And that is what people refer to as the circular economy. That is to say that you don't extract resource, use and dispose. What you do is you extract the resource, you use, reuse, recycle, and then it goes through the loop so that you don't just do irresponsible consumption or production.
That's interesting, because you're trying to tackle the issue from the generational point, which is from the manufacturers down to us, the consumers. Yeah. Now, growing up, we're taught about waste segregation, but we're not taught about decomposing your waste and organic waste. How do you plan to sensitize the people to actually work with your agenda?
So the project site in Accra is based in 2 municipalities, that's the Ladade-Kotopo Municipal Assembly as well as the Lejekoku Municipality. So these 2 municipalities have been the bedrock of the Zero Waste project here in Accra. Segregation, like you mentioned, is very important because if you do not segregate your waste, you pollute the waste, so to speak, because then you mix up all streams of waste, textile waste, plastic waste, organic waste, everything. And if you do that, you cannot properly generate compost from the waste because then you have plastics mixing with that. Eventually, they'll break down but not decompose and form microplastics, which will then pollute your organic waste. So essentially, the model is such that once you're able to segregate your waste at a household level, what we do is that we train households who are interested in setting up urban gardens. And so if you have a space in your house that you feel you can use for a garden, we have an urban farming officer at the organization that goes around most house to house, teach people how to set up urban gardens. But then you realize that the problem is way beyond just setting up the urban garden, how to take care of it, how to manage your space, which is also important. So there are people who've done a lot of engineering in their homes, and so there's no ground, or let me say soil, that is even seeable in the house. And so then we come up with the innovation of wall gardens, where you're able to repurpose some of your broken buckets, dispenser bottles, etc. And then you can have a wall garden when you string them up together and just hang on your wall, and you still have a garden. So it's not necessarily about having a space to cultivate something. It's just about being willing to do something. And once you're willing, people always say that once there's a will, you find a way. And so that's just it.
So you're working in Accra. Is this project also in other parts of the country? And what's the response so far?
So it's not just Ghana even. So there is SCP Edubiase, which is currently producing 2,000 bags of compost, pure organic compost, on a monthly basis. There is SCP in Ibuakwa, that's in Ashanti region of Ghana. There's SCP Cape Coast as well. Then there's SCP Accra, or Zero Waste Accra. But beyond Accra, we're also in Mali, Kenya, Uganda, and even very recently Botswana. And the idea, or when the SCP project was starting out, it was a pilot that looked to be able to replicate itself across. And the point of the zero waste model is that it has to be self-sustaining. Because if it's not self-sustaining, you have to keep putting in resources that you may not even necessarily have. And so the reception point, I can say, for Ghana is very good, because people find that as opposed to paying a lot more money to have your waste collected and sent to a landfill, you can then use your waste on your own. And you can then even sell your waste to other people and generate money. And so for organic waste, we always say you try as much as possible to compost in your home, or you can take it to the MRF, that's the material recovery facility, and have it composted. But for plastic waste, we essentially connect other businesses, small and medium scale enterprises that are along the plastic value chain, that are into recycling, to be able to collect plastic bottles, that's the PETs, PP, all the different types of plastic, and be able to recycle it. And that is how we're fighting it. But then that is just from the end user point. From the production problem, we always say that before plastic waste, or waste generally, becomes a problem, it must be from the source. And so we find that currently the levels of plastic production are very unsustainable, and that's why we have a problem. So even if you decide to invest a lot more into plastic waste management or general waste management, once you do not address the problem from the root source, then it becomes a problem. And so there is the Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee to develop a legally binding instrument on plastic pollution. That INC, or the INC, as people like to call it, has been set up by the United Nations Environment Assembly. What the resolution 514 did was to mandate an INC process that can find a global solution to the problem. So not just a legal perspective for individual countries like exist in status quo, but then one that is legally binding for all countries. And that is what we are looking at. And one of the things that we are saying during this process is that we have to cut down plastic production, because it is from the production of unsustainable levels that's where we're getting the waste problem. So if we're able to cut down production, maybe then our waste management architecture can be able to deal with it. And there are lots of things. talk of restricting the movement or the transboundary movement of plastic waste. You know, because of waste recycling, a lot of the global north countries don't necessarily have recycling plants in their countries. So what they usually do is to export plastic waste to developing countries or the global south countries. And that is a form of waste colonialism, by the way. And then you have them export this waste. Some of the waste comes here contaminated. And so you cannot even recycle because it's mixed with other waste. And then
like second-hand clothing.
Exactly.
The bills, the leftovers. And
Exactly.
it ends up on our landfill sites and sometimes polluting our ocean and water bodies.
Precisely. And so when this waste comes here and you're unable to recycle, you can't send the waste back because it's already here. Then it becomes a problem for us. And so one of the things that this, again, is looking to do is to try to find an international perspective of how to stop the movement of this waste. I mean, if you have waste you want to recycle, you might as well do it in your own backyard. There's no point in transporting it or exporting it to the global south where we are facing the problems of pollution.
Here in Ghana, have you done any project with the EPA or public government to see if you could put together a petition to actually stop this issue from the generational point, which is at the manufacturing stage? Because we have a lot of plastic producing companies operating here in Ghana. Have you done that?
So yes, there is the current, it's a multi-stakeholder approach that the ministry and both the ministry and the agency are using. There is the National Plastic Action Partnership that operates under the Ministry of Environment, Science, Technology and Innovation. And they're bringing together a lot of stakeholders, civil society organizations like us. They're bringing together plastic manufacturers, plastic importers, recycling agencies, informal sector waste workers, essentially everybody along the plastic value chain to try to find a solution to this. Because then the ministry alone cannot find the solution because they possibly do not know the solution from the perspective of manufacturers or civil society. We cannot find a solution alone because then the manufacturers have a different viewpoint. And so it's a multi-stakeholder approach that is trying to find a solution to the problem that we have. And currently, I mean, because of our involvement in the INC process, we work very closely with both EPA and MESTI on the INC process to try and get, as it were, perspectives of all stakeholders. And so currently, we've even submitted to the Ministry and EPA a very hefty document that takes perspectives of the stakeholders along the value chain and gives it to the Ministry on the negotiation points that they should look at when they go for INC. And I think INC is in about 2 weeks from now. And so about a month ago, we hosted that event and saw a lot of people along the value chain. And even before the event, many people did not even know there was something like that going on internationally. And so people got interested, came, gave us their perspectives, what they think the problem was. And I should say it's amazing to know that a lot of people are crying out for a ban on single-use plastic. That is and I like to call them the avoidable plastics because really we can live without them. And those we can. Because, I mean, if you go into waste stream, right, there's a lot of PET that's collected. That's the water bottle, PP, food packaging and all that. Those are recyclable. But if you look at stuff like styrofoam, takeaway packs, those are not recyclable. You can't do anything with them. So they're either going to landfill or you're going to burn them. But then these are plastics that you can avoid. These are plastics that have non-plastic substitutes that you can use. There's a lot of paper packaging going around. And I'm even not an advocate of paper packaging because paper packaging is even single-use. But then there's a lot of reusable bowls around that people have. There's a lot of tote bags made from cloth that people can carry around and use that instead of taking the black plastic bags and all those ones that have no recyclable value. And so there's a lot of these things that have non-plastic substitute that people can use, but then, I mean, so one of the points...
So it starts with us?
Yes, it's basically, that's it.
So when next I'm going to buy washi, I should go with my own bowl?
Go with your own bowl.
Okay,
it's
I'll
really
try.
Difficult. Go with your
it's
own bowl.
very difficult,
and
but I'll try.
Let me put this challenge to you that maybe here at the office, here at the studio, have a plastic tax.
Okay.
When you see somebody using single-use plastic, avoidable plastic, not avoidable and problematic, because then even though you can avoid it, it still brings you problem. Tax the person. Have a rule here at the studio that if you see somebody using single-use plastic, pay 5 cedis, pay 10 cedis, and see in a month's time how many people will stop using it.
I see. Let's see if that will work.
It will work.
But then we're looking at the market centers again, because that's where a lot of waste is generated. I know that some of the projects you're implementing, initiatives, are mostly for household waste and individuals. Is there anything targeted at the markets?
Yes. So when you go to the La Market and then the Malamata Market, there are a lot of traders there who trade in perishables like food stuff and all that. And those stuff are essentially the base of your organic compost because they are pure organics. They are pure organics and those can be easily recyclable. We do not wish for the food products to go to waste, but as and when they do, there are informal sector waste workers, like people who ride the tricycle. We like to call them Aboboya or BTTA. They have an association, the Bola Taxi and Tricycle Association. They move from market to market and collect solely organic waste. And the good thing is that these people know the importance of the work they do, so they're able to even educate the market people that you need to segregate your waste, because they know that if I come and pick segregated waste from your store or your shop, I will be able to make money out of it. And so it is now their responsibility essentially, because we cannot do all the education and capacity building alone. So they also are agents of change and they do that. And so in some markets across Accra, you see some traders steadily segregating their waste. When they drink water from sachets, they put them in a different bag. When they have food stuff that are going bad, they put them in a different bag. And these are the things that help recycling, because if you do not segregate the waste at source, you cannot recycle. If the waste is contaminated, then the only option is either to send it to a landfill, which is going to generate methane, or burn it, which is also still going to pollute the air. And so around January, February, you can see that the air quality is very, very poor. And if you follow EPA on any of the socials, they usually have an air tracker that they use to track the quality of the air that we are breathing. And between January and February, and even the early parts of March, if you see the alarming rate of the air pollution in Accra, you'll be troubled. And so they usually advise that people go out with their nose mask and all that. And so it's a very comprehensive approach, and it doesn't take just the CSO or local government or waste workers or even central government to do. It has to be everybody, because if I don't segregate my waste at source, the Bola taxi person will come, pick the waste, and it's a problem for him. He has to send it to a landfill because he cannot take it to a recycler. He has to send it to a landfill, and that is where the problem. That's where the problem is. And so this is a very, very, very complex thing. But I mean, it's complex but not impossible. We can do it once everybody puts their mind to it. We can do it.
Thank you so much, Johnson, for joining us here on The Pulse. Key takeaways: segregate your waste, and that's the way to go. Well, we're taking a quick breather here on The Pulse. When we come back, we'll talk about the adjustment of transport fares. Government is kicking against it, but road users and especially the passengers are already feeling the brunt because the drivers have already increased fares. We'll talk about all that when we return from this break.